Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we make sense of modern parenting one real conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a mom of 6, former public school teacher, and your guide through the wild, wonderful journey of raising kids in today's world. If you've got a tween or one who's on the horizon, you might be asking, what is happening to my child? Well, today's guest has answers. I'm so thrilled to welcome Jennifer Greve, an experienced educator, principal, and coach who has worked with students and families for decades. She's here to help us understand the neuroscience, emotions, and chaos of the middle school years and how to raise resilient, responsible kids in the process. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a great introduction. Thank you so much, Jessica. I sound really cool.
You are really cool. I can't wait for our audience to hear more about your journey and path and the insights that you have to share today. Can you walk us a little bit, give us a little bit more context for who you are? Why did you decide to go into education, supporting families? Where's that heart coming from?
I started way back in the 90s and I was going to school to get a bachelor's in English teaching for secondary. And at the same time, I found myself in a part-time job working for a crisis center and helping families and teens that were in various levels of crisis process information, just take a hold, stop, and figure out how to get back together. And then through that, I also ended up working with one of their long-term care facilities, which then once I got my degree led me to working with an at-risk boarding school for kids and being able to really develop one-on-one relationships with kids, develop really healthy ways to communicate with them, find ways for them to communicate in the English classroom and then just personally as well, which then led me to teaching at a charter school for grades 6 through 12. And during that time, I taught 7th grade English, 8th grade English. I taught various high school English. Even taught dual enrollment college English. So I loved that I got to see the breadth of their growth, right? From that time of 11 to that time of 18 and 19. It was fascinating to watch this kid I taught as a 7th grader now walk into the classroom as a senior in high school and go, wait, you're different now, right? what happened? And so I think that being able to have that experience really led me to enjoying this age group. And it became a natural transition then to become a leader of the school and focus on just relationships with kids and helping them figure out what is going on for them, letting it not be a mystery to them as well, and giving them skill sets so that when they left high school, they felt like they were a little bit more prepared for whatever was going to come next. I mean, it's been a great journey for sure.
Oh my gosh. Well, as a former elementary school teacher, so I taught kinder through 2nd grade. When you're talking about working with middle schoolers, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. So what made you fall in love specifically with that age range? And I guess also like, what are some of those things that are often misunderstood or overlooked for parenting resources at that age?
Yeah, it's so funny because, okay, when I ask you about your middle school, you just brought up as an elementary school teacher, you were like, I don't know. But when you think of your middle school, what was it like? Like, do you want to go back to middle school? No.
Never.
Nobody wants to go back to middle school. I don't even want to go back to middle school. And what I found with them though is that they're so creative. They're so open to the world and what's happening. And they have amazing questions that sometimes I'm like, adults should be asking these questions, right? They're starting to look at the world through that adult lens. And they're piecing it together. And you'll have this amazing conversation with a 13-year-old about this lesson that they did in their social studies class that brought up some things in what's going on in the world. And they have these really deep understandings. And then you turn around and they're telling you this little dad joke that's hysterical and they're laughing their heads off, right? Like they swing from those places because that's where they are. And I just have always really appreciated how they can approach the world in a little more honest and creative way because they still have a little bit of that elementary school kid, right? You working with 2nd graders, right? Their creativity, their spontaneity, their fun. So they've still got a little bit of that going on, but then we're getting this higher order thinking and cognitive growth that's happening. So they're able to take that creativity and apply it with this cognitive growth, and amazing things can really happen when we work with them in that space. So I think they're fun.
I mean, the way that you frame that, I'm like, okay, well, let me think back a little bit because maybe I just had, a unique experience, which I think we all did. But
Right.
ultimately, it does come down to like some of those developmental pieces that you had mentioned as well, where they're kind of like coming into their own, figuring out who they are. What's actually, I guess, like just to even have that broader conversation, what's actually happening in a tween's brain developmentally?
Well, I mean, what we have to do to approach it, like I would have parents come into my office at the school all the time and just honestly say, why is my child so weird? Right. And I would joke that it was like, it's kind of like the aliens came down and took your sweet little elementary school child and they're
Mm.
holding on to them and they left you with this entity that you're not sure what's happening, right? And your kid's going to come back, but they have to go through all this first because there's so much going on for them physically, emotionally, and socially. One of the things I always talk about is like, we have to really be aware and honor that this is the second biggest portion of brain development for the human being. Okay. The first is obviously baby through toddler, right up to that 5-year-old range. When they hit 11, 12, we're now going to get another big, huge spurt. And so their brain is taking time to kind of slough off things that they learned when they were little and say, okay, I don't really need that anymore. And now I'm going to allow these bigger concepts to come in and not rewire, but reconnect some different points in my brain. And I don't even know that that's happening, right? So we have this huge brain development that's going on. Then we have puberty. So their body itself is completely changing, right? Then we're going to put them in academic settings where we're going to have more demands on them. School gets harder academically when you're at the 7th and 8th grade range, right? We're asking more of them, where they're seeing more teachers. They're having to meet different needs of different teachers and different homework for different teachers. And we're asking them to go through all of these different schedules, right? And then at home or in dance class or on a team or whatever, we're going to ask more responsibility from them. We're going to say, okay, you're 12 now. You can do these things more. You can help out more with your siblings. You can do more chores. Maybe if the family has a business, you can help out at the business, right? So we're going to add that demand, and then we're going to add social demands on them, right? Friends become more important at this stage. Identity is starting to become more important. Wanting to fit in and feel, belonging is going to become more important. So when you have those 5 things going on for an 11, 12, 13-year-old, do you sometimes step back and go, okay, no wonder they're a mess, right?
Yeah.
We're asking so much of them while their brain and their body is doing things they don't even understand. So they are going to do this emotional roller coaster because they're just trying to figure out, like, how do I get through the next 5 minutes in my math class, right? Like, my
Right.
teacher's
Oh my
talking
gosh.
about
The
this
way you
problem,
frame
but
that, I'm
uh-huh,
like,
yeah,
no wonder.
I know. It's like really when you stop and you really think about it, all of those things going on, and they can only handle that 5 minutes in that one classroom trying to answer the teacher's question, but knowing that the girl behind them might be talking about them and I don't want to look stupid. So it's really important, I think, that we do look at how their brain is developing and then all of these other categories of things that are going on for them, because then we have more empathy, right? Like just watching your face when I laid that all out, didn't you suddenly go, yeah, my poor kid?
Right. Yeah, that was exactly the feeling. I'm like, oh my gosh. By the time we got to like the third thing, I'm like, wait a minute. This is this is so hard for their little tiny body to go through.
Hmm.
Like as you mentioned, like the demands just kind of keep piling on as they get older too. So, what are some ways that maybe parents could, in addition to having just empathy and understanding of where they're at, what are some ways that parents can, best support their kids at this stage?
I think the number one thing, honestly, is just to talk about them about this stuff and to be able to explain to them, look, here's what's going on for your brain, right? This is what's happening in your brain. Here's what's going on. Be open to talking about the body changes. That's really hard for a lot of kids. Young girls don't like the changes in their bodies because they don't like attention that might be coming to them. Young men, they don't like what's going on that they have no control, right? So be open to those conversations. Explain to them what's going on because it is so confusing. And they don't often have the language. So that would be my number 2, is start helping them with language around, especially emotions. What does this feel like? Okay, you're confused. Let's talk about what's confusing to you. Okay, you're mad at this friend or hurt by this friend. Let's talk about that. And start developing language, because sometimes just having a word to identify how I'm feeling or what's going on takes away that out of control feeling. They can start to say, I know what this is. Now I can work on dealing with it or asking for help with it or whatever it might be that they need.
Right, right. Like the language and empathy. And I think too, like this goes for a variety of contexts, right? So you had mentioned like biologically what's happening with their body. Like I think another big one at that age that I can remember at least is like the social
Yeah.
things that are happening. And then with the demands of school, like where is there any lines for like responsibility and independence? And then also, being there to support them? Like how does that kind of all play in from like the parents' role?
Well, one of the things that's important, we know at this age group that what they're doing is they're trying to look for independence, right? They're
Mhm.
starting to develop their sense of self. And we as parents and guardians and aunts and uncles, right? What we want to remember is that they're practicing to be an adult, right? Everything they do is practicing. Everything we do is helping them to practice to get to that point. And when you stop and really think about it, 12 to 18, you have 6 years to help them practice. So when it comes to things like giving them freedoms or opportunities for independence, if parents start to look at it in four categories, it's really like freedoms, obviously, they're going to want freedoms. They maybe want some jobs, right? That might become part of it. Chores could be part of responsibility. So when we start to, I think about what are different kinds of independence and freedoms that we can give our kids, we're going to look at it in those areas. So
Mm.
then we bring in asking the child, let's say they want more responsibility. I worked with a parent recently that her son's 11 and he wanted to start mowing the lawn. I was like, that's a perfect thing. And obviously, as a mom, she was like, well, what if he does it wrong? Or what if he hurts himself? And I was like, well, you're going to teach him how to do it and you're going to practice with him. Um, that is a great opportunity for a kid to start taking on something they saw as a little kid as like this big responsibility, and then they can go and do it and feel confident in it, right? Things like jobs, babysitting, mowing other people's lawns, right?
Right.
Again, if a family has a business, taking on little tasks in the family business that helps them practice that adult sensibility.
Mhm.
Freedoms, I think, are the hardest ones for parents, right? We don't want our kid to go to the movies without an adult present. We don't want them to just go downtown or the park and hang out, right? We get really nervous around what is going to happen. And so I always talk about like possibility versus probability. Okay. Is it possible something might happen if you let your child go to the park with a friend? Is it probable though? Probably not, right? And what you try to do is you try to set up expectations and knowledge for your child so they can say, I want to go and do this. I want to show you that I'm trustworthy, that I am capable, and that if I get into trouble, I know to call you. So as a parent, you say, okay, you want to go to the park and hang out with your friends. Which friend are you going to be there? Okay, I trust this friend. Great. That's wonderful. Which park? Okay, here's our time frame. My expectation is that you guys won't walk downtown from there, or if something changes, you're going to call me if your child has a cell phone. If your child then can complete all of those tasks, they just showed you that they're responsible and can have those freedoms. Now, meanwhile, mom, you might be at home going,
It's 1 minute past. Where are they?
right? But you have to. I saw this great quote one time on social media, and it says, it's our job to give our teens age appropriate freedoms. It's their job to prove that they can be trusted with them. And if we continue to withhold those opportunities, they never get to practice being an adult. So it is a parental leap of faith, right?
Yeah, I saw something you mentioned in social media. I saw something recently that was talking about how, the millennials are like raising like this anxious generation because we were raised that way. And there was like an experiment where they allowed their child to like go into the restaurant and order their own food and then come back out to the car. My kids aren't quite there at that middle school age. My oldest is 9, so we're like right there on the cusp. So I'm like soaking in all this information today. I'm like, okay, back pocket, I got this for when I'm ready. When we get to that stage. But I'm thinking too, there are things that you could do within reason, like even just having your child order at the restaurant if
Hmm.
they're, pre-middle school. And
Absolutely.
then is, sets them up for that more like a feeling of confidence too.
Yes.
Like, oh, I can do this. I can take care of myself. I can, make my own lunch. Like that's definitely something that they could do
Yeah,
by middle.
food is a great place to start with kids, being able to make their own snacks, be able to make their own lunch. My daughter would help make dinner at the 10-year-old spot so that there were different times that she could if she wanted to. And it's interesting. I love how you brought up the piece about confidence and just ordering their own food at a restaurant. Little things like that. The number of college kids that I've been working with recently, that one of the biggest things for them is either A, emailing or talking to a professor about a class, doing that themselves, right? Advocating for themselves. Or B, calling and making their own hair appointment, calling and making their own doctor's appointment, calling and making, like, actually talking to a person on the phone to make an appointment that they need to do. Well, in those situations, a lot of times it's because it was just done for them. And it wasn't started as this little thing like, what would you like? And tell the waiter what you want, right? So I love that you brought up that example too, because it's those little things that help them develop that confidence.
I love that. And I think too, like the, educator in me, and I know that you're an educator too, I'm like thinking about the things that we could model for our kids. And like when you mention, calling the doctor to make an appointment, like it's not too much effort to have them sitting there with you and having it on speakerphone because it's an appointment for them. They may not know the scheduling of like, oh yeah, I can for sure
Right?
be there on Tuesday at that time, but they can hear the conversation and the dialogue and also your own perception of like, do I get nervous when I call the doctor to make an appointment? Or is it something that I feel like I could be confident? Like, okay, sure, I schedule. I know that I need to go to the doctor. This is how we do that.
Right. It's an element of, I've talked with parents about, is like, if you think of it, parenting as this visual that when they're little, right? When we walk with our children when they're little, we're holding their hand and sometimes we're tugging them along, right? Because they're,
Depends on
I
the
don't
kid.
want to, right? Whatever they're doing as toddlers and 7-year-olds, and we're
For
pulling
sure.
them along. When you get to middle school, high school, you want to think about you're walking with them. You're
Mm,
walking next to them and walking with them down the road. And then once they are in their 20s and moving forward, it's almost like you're a little behind them because they're leading the way in their own life, and that you're there in case they fall, and you're going to push them back up and say, "Nope, I got you. It's going to be okay." So your example of making the phone call with them sitting there, that's perfect modeling. You're doing it with them. They get to see how it's done, hear how it's done. And then when the next time comes around, you sit there and do it with them. Right.
that-
And thinking about teachers, one of the things I did a lot with students at the middle school and high school was I would teach them how to advocate for themselves. They'd come like, oh, so and so is my social studies teacher is not listening to me and he's not grading my homework and blah, 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 right? Well, let's go talk to that teacher. Well, I can't talk to the teacher. Sure, you can. Let's practice how to do that. And so just having in that world, the administrator walk with them to learn how to talk to the teacher, or if it's a parent, if you go to parent conferences, having your child ask the teacher those kinds of questions, right? Like finding those little moments that they understand that it is their world, their education, their life, and you're there to model and support them. And we're teaching you how to advocate for yourself.
I think a lot too of like what you're saying now reminds me of, like when you say you're playing baseball and you break the window of the neighbor, like the child has to go over and apologize and make it right. And like the parent is still there for like emotional support.
Right.
But it really is that kind of ownership of that experience of like, okay, I'm going to take control of my education. Like I'm going to advocate, I'm going to ask a question
Right.
because ultimately when you get to college or beyond high school, right, your parents not going to be there every step of the way.
Exactly.
So even encouraging them, I love to your point about in middle school, high school, like they should be asking the questions, they should be leading that discussion, and you can still be there and provide that like modeling and support. But then also what a huge confidence booster of like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing in social studies, and like
Hmm.
I can make sure that I'm asking the right questions, or if I'm not understanding something, can I go and ask for help? That's a whole other thing. I think we've had other episodes on it, like the college level of children and young adults, just like figuring out who can I ask for help? Like they
Hmm.
don't even know how to ask for help in the first place.
And that's exactly where I really am enjoying my work because I try very hard to be and teach families to be proactive, right? The number of families that would come, and just because we're having that own parental fear and concern and frustration that we're seeing our elementary child, our baby, and over here we know high school is going to happen, and that's really scary. It's taking those couple years to, as parents, even practice with our children, having them have that freedom, having the time when we're talking with them about how to talk to somebody, teaching them, okay, yeah, you're right. You have 6 classes now, and we have to figure out how to do this homework, and you're playing baseball, and we have this family dinner. So let's work together to figure out how we do this time management and this scheduling. Another huge skill that sometimes it's perceived they're just going to know how to do it once they graduate high school.
Right.
Nope. The it is. It's like the number of
Yeah.
kids that are going to college or VOTEC schools that don't know how to manage their time because it was just done for them. And to be fair to parents, sometimes it's done for them just because, schools have a bell schedule. Practice is at this time, right? Dinner is at this time. When you're running a household, and you absolutely know this, that when you're running a household, schedule's kind of a big deal, right? And so they already are naturally within a schedule. And so, finding those magic moments in the family scheduling where then they can participate in how to do that, or what do they need to schedule for themselves? Again, we're helping them to practice what we want when they graduate.
Yeah, I love that contrast too of like there's things that are set, right? Like even in adulthood, there's like you have to report to work at a certain time. There's specific things that you have to do on a rigid schedule, but then there's also these times when you're like, okay, I know that I have this to-do list of things that I need to get done, and these are the hours in the day that I can do them. And also being able to prioritize, like what is
Oh,
most
yeah.
important for me. Like I think too, to that point of like in relation to academics, I guess would be like homework, right? Like if
Mhm.
it's a Friday night and you know that you don't have your schoolwork due till Monday, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna wait till Saturday. I'm gonna wait till Sunday, and then it's like Sunday night comes and you're
You're
like,
like,
wait, my homework's due tomorrow. Where is that kind of peace of mind and the priority of like, oh well, if I just like whip it out Friday night, then I can relax the rest of the weekend. Versus if I wait till Sunday, that's fine too. Like it'll still get done before. However, that feels comfortable with the student and whatever routines, things that are happening at home to help them prioritize what needs to be done and when.
and I like how you said what feels good to the team, right? Because there's going to be times we have to let them take the ownership of it, and it's going to be different than ours, right? That it might be, I had a mom that's like, when she was in college, and even now, when she got an assignment, she did it and was done and moved on. Her
Mhm.
son, nope, that's not how he worked. And so you have to work with the child. Then if you are a family where siblings, this
Mhm.
child's going to need it this way, this child's going to want it this way. So you always are thinking about who is the personality in front of me, and
Right.
the one that waits till Sunday, that just might be what works for them. Did they get it done? Sure. Okay. The one that did it on Friday night? Great. Okay. But it's about that, helping them have that, not necessarily autonomy, but the independence to say, this is what works for me, and
Mhm.
I can do this in this way.
Yeah, and then even in those moments too of, I am speaking. I have 6 children. I'm not at the middle school level yet, as I mentioned, but I know too. Like my oldest two, they're about 12 months apart, and there's a lot of competition between them. And so one of the things that we have in our household is, they can have the best intention. Like if they're both driven to do something on a Friday night, great, that's fine. If it doesn't work out, then we can come up with a backup plan. Like if they weren't successful in getting their homework done by Monday, okay, well, what should we adjust for next weekend to make sure that we don't feel as many of like those, stressful thoughts or like the anxiety coming up to Monday to maybe help us do something a little different next time. And so I love to that point that you made too of like making sure that it feels right for the kid. And then also we're here to help guide them, like with support and help them problem solve because they don't have it all figured out.
Right.
I don't think we even do as an
No,
adults,
no.
but
We're fake it till you make it kind of thing. Well, and you brought up an important piece too of that with your own children, like the idea that they set up this plan and it didn't work. And even like, let's go back to my freedom example. We're going to let the child go to the park with the friends, right? Letting them fail or make a mistake is really important. And What I try to teach parents and what I did in my own home was that I acknowledge that mistakes are going to happen and that is where we learn. And especially if you have a kind of a type A personality kiddo, right? Who everything's going to be, that was mine. She was like, everything had to be done. And if she made a mistake, that was a huge problem. And so it was really about letting her know that mistakes are okay, that we're learning from them. And now, okay, that didn't work out. So what can we do differently next time? Okay. In the situation with friends, let's say that you had this setup that they were going to go to the park and hang out with friends, and the friend's mom was going to pick them up and bring them home. You wanted them to send you a text, along the way, at some point in it. Let's say you didn't get a text and they were late coming home. Well, we could, as parents, immediately get angry because we're anxious and afraid, and now we see them safe. So now we got to let go of those emotions. And because we were so upset, now we're angry. We need to also take a step back and say, okay, what happened? I'm angry because I was so worried about you. Now I'm teaching about emotions and emotional regulation. I just was so worried. I'm sorry I yelled. Talk to me about what happened. And then through the conversation, you find out that your child maybe didn't charge their phone fully before they left. And when they were with friends, they were all busy, like looking at silly reels on whatever and giggling, and they lost the power on their phone. Well, okay, that's something your child could control, right? They could have charged their phone more, and you can process that control with them. You could have charged your phone more, and you could have maybe watched less reels on your phone. But being late was due to the friend's mom being late and not getting there in time. And because your child maybe was already feeling anxious about being late and not be texting you and didn't want to do wrong, that they were afraid to use the friend's phone or the mom's phone to call and text you, right? So now as a parent, you have more information that you can talk with them about what is in your control, what is out of your control. Okay, how could we have handled this differently? What could we do for next time? Because they might not have any ideas, right?
Yeah.
And so those are really those important things that happen when we put those responsibilities and freedoms with our kids, and then we allow for that failure. We can now work with them so that when they are outside the home, they're more resilient and they know how to handle a challenge or a problem or things that come up. And sometimes that problem challenge might be, the solution might be, okay, I think I know one of these two things I can do. I'm going to call mom or dad and say, hey, this is going on. This is what I'm thinking I might do to solve it. What do you think? And let me tell you, when they're in their 20s and they call you to run an idea by you, it's the best. You're like, okay, thank you. Okay, I'm valuable.
I'm still the,
I love it. You talk to me. You trust me. That's so great.
I love that. I love that. And I think, just kind of like help summarize it all too, of like, nobody's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes through this process. And so wherever we are in our individual parenting journeys and things, just to be able to, I think, start with your point that you started with was, the awareness piece and like the empathy piece of like, we're all at different stages in our life. We may have lived through our version of what they're going through, but also they have a unique experience that they have different parents, a different household, a different time in society. And that empathy piece, I think, is that great kind of like a layer of foundation, as you mentioned.
Right. I mean, if
That
we
trust.
all, as parents and again, guardians and best friends and aunts and uncles, start with that empathy place of, this is hard. I remembered it as being hard. So let's talk about why it's hard. Let's give you a little space to just talk about what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of our episode today. So we have a segment called Ask Emmy. So at Launch Family, we've created Emmy to be your on-call parenting coach and support. So Jennifer, we've gathered a couple questions from our parenting community and would love to hear your take on them.
Okay.
The first one is, my 11-year-old is suddenly moody and secretive. Should I be worried?
No. And it's natural. Okay, first and foremost, we're parents, we're going to worry. That's just kind of a given. 9 times out of 10, they're not doing anything nefarious, right? And it's okay for them to want to go in their room and be by themselves. And if they share a room with siblings, to be able to find times that they can be by themselves in the room without the sibling, right? A lot of times, if you go back to all of those things that are going on for them during the day, there's a reason they're moody and sullen, right? There is a reason behind it. There's the secretive part is more about that they don't know what's going on. They're learning how to keep something private to themselves, like adults do. And you just want to be present for the moments when they come out and want to talk to you or spend time with you. So, no, that's totally normal.
Oh, that sounds good. Good peace of mind.
Yeah.
Okay, this is normal. I shouldn't be too worried.
Yeah.
We're a little worried is all good.
Right.
Not overly worried. And then the next question is, I feel like my tween is embarrassed by me. What should I do?
They are.
I love this simple answer too. I'm like, this is
This
reality.
is just reality. I mean, it's true. They are at times. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that it's right. You have to take it all in levels. The moody, secretive, and being embarrassed by you. Those are very, very natural for the kids because they want to blend in. They want to be noticed, but not really noticed a lot, right? They want it to be on their terms. And you as a parent might not be doing anything different than you've ever done before. You may be telling, I brought up dad jokes earlier. You might be the dad that tells their mom that tells those silly jokes that they loved in elementary school. And now they're like, are you kidding me? Shut up right now. And it goes back to that they are trying to figure out what is important to them and how to be themselves. And so you as the parent, you just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. Now, the caveat with that would be on the extreme end, the moody and secretive. It's very, very natural. If you get to a point where though you just look at your child and you say, okay, that's not something you would say. That's not something you would do. Like, we know our children, right? Then there's a point that you're going to want to ask some questions and talk with them. If on the extreme that your tween who's embarrassed by you is rude to you in front of people, then that's a time as a parent we sit down and have a boundary conversation, say that was inappropriate. I would never do that to you. So let's talk about that, right? So again, gradations of scale. On the one end, super normal. That's what they're doing. Just keep being parents and being present. And, just know that there's times when it's absolutely appropriate for you to say, okay, I'm feeling nervous because I feel like you're hiding and keeping secrets. Is there something I should know? Okay, what you said to me in front of those people, I know I embarrass you sometimes. I understand my parents embarrassed me too, but that was rude and unacceptable. Right.
Yeah. I love that kind of clarity too that you bring of also seeking understanding first. Like none of what you just said was like, I can't believe you did this. Go to your room, blah, blah, or like, I'm going to pull all of the computers and all the screens out of the house because I think you're keeping something from me. Like that was not anything that you just described, but rather like this kind of framing of seeking to understand what's going on and opening up
Yes.
a conversation.
Right. Because the key to that you always want to think about is that especially 11, 12, 13, it's going to be those simple things, right? When they get to 16, right, those are some things that really could happen that could concern us. So you want them to be able to text you or call you at 16 and 17 and say, this is going on and I don't feel comfortable. Will you come get me? Right? Or this is going on for my friend and I'm really worried about him. What should I do? Because at those really large, concerning, different behaviors and issues start to happen for kids around those ages. So you want your child to be able to come to you first and talk with you. And you start that by saying, okay, I'm not going to scream at you. Here's the deal. That was inappropriate or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think too, for families that are on the younger end of the spectrum, like where I'm currently at with 5 months to 9 years old, it is like, you're walking with them, leading them so that eventually they can become independent. And to your point too, of like the 16, 17, 18 of when things get a little bit more serious and there's more serious like external consequences too, right? If
Right.
they make a mistake, so to speak, being able to have those communication channels open and just because you have one conversation doesn't mean that, oh yeah, I'm going to for sure call mom next
Okay.
time. Like it does take probably like years to
Yeah.
build that foundation of trust.
Yeah. And
with
if you just keep
those.
saying to yourself as a parent, we're practicing. We're
I love
practicing.
that.
We're practicing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, any other thoughts, takeaways for families that are listening wherever they may be on their journey and along the spectrum with their age of their kiddos?
Well, I have a quick visual that's really great for parents when your child comes home and they just have lost their mind and they're completely freaking out. And I love this visual, and you're going to do it with me, Jessica,
Okay.
because you can use it with your children so they understand what's happening. So Dr. Daniel Siegel has this whole theory on brain development and what's happening. And he uses the hand model. And so if you take your hand, put your hand up, and you think of the brain stem is here. And then you have the amygdala, which is in charge of all the emotions, fight or flight, freeze, all those just sensory pieces. And the amygdala usually sits in here. Okay. Your prefrontal cortex comes over and protects the amygdala. And this is the piece of the brain that's all about logic, reasoning, choice, understanding. Okay. Now, this piece right here, we'll open that up. This amygdala developed by birth right away. Like that's when they're crying. That's when emotions are out to get what they need, whatnot. During the time frame we're talking, this prefrontal cortex is developing. So there are times where it's like, maybe like this, maybe like this, maybe like this. We don't know. And it continues to happen. And so when they come home and they've had these whole horrible days, suddenly there is no prefrontal cortex and it is all emotion because they're not sure. This is developing. And it's a great visual to use with your kids so that they can see that, okay, like, because they're going to feel bad when they've lost their minds. Now I can understand what's happening, and it helps that prefrontal cortex continue to develop because they understand what's happening. I had one parent that even just like the kid would come home, they created it as a hand signal. The kid would come home and just go,
I
right?
was just gonna say that. I'm like, man, I want to try this with my kids, like with just the hand signal. Like, how are you feeling today? Like, just a quick check in. Like, at this moment, where are we?
Right.
You feel like you can manage things, or I need to break, and maybe I'm full of emotion.
Exactly. And it becomes that time where now they understand they can be in control of their emotions and they can let you know what's going on and that they need time to decompress. And then they could come back and be a pseudo human being again, right?
I love that.
I'm
Even for
so glad.
adults, even my
It's a
spouse.
great
Like, okay, let's
tool.
go. Can you talk to me right now, or not?
We're not, no.
Where am I?
Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
I'm all over the place.
Right. Your amygdala is showing.
And as a parent, you can also use it with your kid. You can say, if you've had a bad day, you can let your kid go, so that they know, again, modeling, right? They know that parents have bad days too, and sometimes they need their own decompression. It's perfect.
I love it. What a great takeaway and like way to kind of close out the conversation that we've had today. So Jennifer, I just want to thank you for bringing your heart, humor, and experience to the conversation. The insights into what's really going on during middle school years are truly invaluable. And your message about trusting the process and empowering your kids to grow really does resonate with so many parents.
Yeah.
To our listeners, if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who's navigating that middle school phase or maybe coming up into it. And check the show notes for links to connect with Jennifer, including her coaching and speaking opportunities. Until next time, remember that the preteen years might feel messy, but your parenting doesn't have to be. We're here to walk with you every step of the way.